Hit record. Okay, I think we're recording now. This is team 3. We're doing scenario 5 and 6. Scenario 5 is on empowerment, and our first discussion question says, what type of assessments can you create or use to improve empowerment at your school? Now, some of the reading it directed us to a needs assessment, direct assessment, as well as indirect assessment. So if anybody want to get started, feel free to jump in.
I just put I thought about doing like teacher surveys or even having teacher checklists just to kind of see where the empowerment is. How are they feeling about teaching? And also providing an opportunity for them to self-reflect too, something that they don't have to turn in, but giving them a space where they can just kind of think about it.
Sure.
Yeah, I was talking about that the self reflection. I actually was talking about that self reflection too, because talking about the empowerment piece was talking about making sure that you talk about the parents, the community members, the students, and the teachers. And I think self reflection is the way to go here, because if you start having the parents assess the teachers, and then the teachers sit there and say, well, how are you helping the kids at home? And then the community members saying, how are the teachers doing this? Then you get a bunch of he said, she said, and a bunch of finger pointing, and that's what you want to steer clear of. So you got to be very careful, and there's a big line to toe whenever you start to get too many people to try to say, well, I have a stake in the learning process, and you want to make sure that every single person that has that's in there has a voice. But you don't want everybody to feel like they're the majority, stakeholder, and that they're the only person that is getting listened to. I said, create a rubric for the student can assess themselves based on the knowledge after a test. If they take a test and they want to sit there and say, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, give them about 5 or 6 questions on every single unit, and just say, hey, how did I do? Could I have done something better? Could I have done this, and this? Teachers, same thing after your unit, you teach a unit. Well, what could I have done better to teach that unit better? Parents, you could actually send out a survey to them and just say, hey, is there anything I could have done to help my student out more, to help them study, to help them do this, to help them do that? Kind of make sure that everybody feels like they're part of it, and everybody's kind of getting empowered, and everybody feels like they're part of the common goal, and making sure that those kids are good to go. Also, I was talking also about you could take community members and parents and invite them into the classroom and into the school setting, and not have like just have them fill out like a little quick 1 or 2 question survey, like, how was your visit today? Was it pleasant? Like, not give them the opportunity to kind of complain on the survey, but make it more of a positive thing, and just say, well, if we are having a problem in a school, what can we do to fix it? So that we're aware, because sometimes when we have a problem, we're not aware of it until somebody points it out. So
I agree with you, Heath, because after our school visits, we have kind of come together as our STEAM team come together as a STEAM team, a small group of us, to discuss what people are seeing after they visit our school. And so going back to the scenario, I feel like it is important to have those stakeholders involved, and not, like you said, to be a just to kind of point out all our negative points, but in order to empower us to say, okay, look, you're doing this, and we saw this going on throughout your building. We saw technology being used. We saw collaboration. We saw critical thinking. And so with that in mind, having that positive feedback, you can also put it back on your teachers to, okay, well, we wish we would have seen this, like, not necessarily that they just absolutely didn't see it. Maybe they just missed it, or that wasn't a part of the lesson for that day, because let's face it, 30 minutes of a visit or something like that. So it's just like a snapshot. So I feel like having those stakeholders involved is very important to empowerment, because now teachers can feel, teachers and community members can have total buy-in to making your school and with the vision of the whole school as well.
Mr. Bonaparte, I don't know if you wanted to tag in, but I'm trying to. Okay. All right. So, yeah, all the things that I agree with you guys on the surveys, and some of the links that he had listed, basically all those it can be encompassed into a needs assessment that you do from administrative perspective from the at the school level. And I think one of the advantages of doing a needs assessment is that, like you said, you get the input from all the stakeholders, and you're looking at what gaps exist in an effort to have the teachers and so forth to come up with the strategies that help you as an administrator empower them. So I'm definitely in agreement. The second question, if no one else had anything on the first one.
Well, I was just going to
Go
say,
ahead.
I was just going to say, any assessment that you do, I think you need to make sure you run it through the 6 attributes of teacher empowerment, and that is decision making, professional growth, status, self-efficacy, autonomy, and teacher input. And I agree that those things should be self-assessed, because I think you're your own worst critic, and you'll probably pull out some things that other people would just shy over and just think, oh, okay, well, no, that just must have been something that was evident, but you know yourself. And so you can evaluate those things a little clearer.
Mm-hmm. And the next question, but those are some good points too, Mr. Bonaparte. How can you make fast decisions concerning what is best for your students, and how can you devote more time to your teachers in order to create empowerment? That was 2 and 3.
In my notes, I put that, using the information that you got from using the data that you got from your surveys and your checklists and your self-reflections, you can get with that team, because the case study mentioned that you have a team of teachers. So you can get with that team of teachers and then decide on, one, put that focus on one goal that you want to, implement to help your students.
And I think it's important that you emphasize where you said one, instead of trying to attack the entire list. I think it's important that you look at one particular criteria from your survey, from teacher input, and then attack one goal at a time. And I think that you'll see more results in that, because if you're thinking about too much at one time, or trying to attack and fix things, different criteria of your school at one time, then nothing gets done. So saying that one thing, focusing on one aspect of that survey is very important.
I asked these questions to the administrator that I'm working with, the principal at the school, just to kind of see what he was going to say as far as how does this apply to what he's doing in his school. And he gave the example that in the math department, they're concerned about the EOC scores, the upcoming tests, and so forth. So he said he met with the department chair, and they came up with a plan. They decided to basically identify students who were considered on the bubble, quote unquote, like they were almost there. And from there, he allowed the department he empowered the department to come up with their own plan of action to help those students prepare better for the test. So what they did in essence was it was like 40 students, I think they identified, or something like that. And they all divided those students up. So during the advisory period, they worked with those students on EOC skills that were identified. But he said that was his perspective of like empowering the teacher, meeting with department chair and allowing them, instead of dictating, what to do, he allowed them to make it work, and they're doing it now. So
I think too, if we want to combine 2 and 3, if you look at how can you make fast decisions concerning what is best for your students, I think if you allow teachers to come up with the core values for the school, like what are your core values? At your core, maybe there's 5 core values that the school is based on, and anything that we do, anything that we talk about, anything that we discuss, any new things we want to bring about, they have to be run through the screen of these 5 core values. Well, that allows us to eliminate a lot of stuff. So therefore, we get away from things rabbit trails that would take us off base. And then I think too, so that's our fast decisions right there, because it's run through our core values. And then devoting more time comes in, because now that I've gotten rid of the rabbit trails, I have more time to focus on the key things that my teachers need, because we've gotten rid of stuff that was a distraction. So I think if we just make sure that everybody has buy-in to those 5 or 6 core values, and let's run everything through that, and then we eliminate any excess.
Another thing I want to piggyback on what Candace said in terms of that self-reflection. I was reading an article for one of the links that he had online from, I think, Ryan. He was an educator who gave like 5 suggestions for making professional development part of every day, and that was definitely one of them. I think that self-reflection is so important, and these were the suggestions that he was making in lieu of like the old boring, old-fashioned PD that none of us typically want to be a part of, like, so he's providing some alternates, and that was one of them, like make PD a part of your everyday practice, which makes sense. And that self-reflection to me would be more impactful than any professional development that you would probably have, because you're looking at, what you did. And in my opinion, even in looking at like videotaping yourself, and looking at your own video, that's a self-reflect. Like you can look and see what you're doing, and, and making the improvements that you need to make, which leads to scenario 6, leadership through culture development. So question 1 says, how can you create more professional development and staff reflection to promote leadership through cultural development?
Let me start that out. Because I want to go back to 5 for a second, because I said,
Okay.
I didn't put my 2 cents in yet. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just wanted to do that. But whenever it was talking about question 2 and 3, whenever I was looking at that, I wasn't quite sure exactly how fast they were saying with how fast it was. And I didn't know if it was a day, if it was like, okay, well, we got something thrust upon us at the beginning of the day. We need something taken care of by the end of the day. I didn't know if it was okay by the end of the week. But, whenever I was looking at that, I said, you could sit there and you were saying that before about that teacher panel. That teacher panel is kind of what you want to rely on to make sure that you take a look at that teacher panel. And you pick those teachers for a reason. Like those teachers, you trust those teachers. And, the whole scenario 5 was talking about, okay, when you go into classrooms and you talk to your teachers and you talk to your students and you talk to the community members, you're preaching that culture change. And you're making sure that whenever you're talking about that culture, that you're trying to empower everybody for that buy-in. So you have that buy-in when it comes down to it. You could also do an all-call. Like you could do an all-call and say, hey, if you want to get the parents back involved too, you could do an all-call where you would say, okay, hey, we have a Survey Monkey, come fill this out by the end of the week, and then they feel like they're part of it too. Ultimately, the administration and the teachers, I feel like, have kind of the final say, but with those parents, because I have a feeling that they want what's best for their kid, and sometimes what's best for that honors kid is not best for the kid that's not the honors kid, or it's not best for the kid that's not mainstreamed in the classroom. So sometimes parents are a little bit, they have the kind of the blinders on when it comes down to it also, and they want what's best for their kid. And they want what's best for pretty much all kids, but sometimes they get blinded by what their kid needs, and their needs that way too. So,
yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
So I'll repeat that. Thank you, Heath. I'll repeat that question again for number 1 for scenario 6. How can you create more professional development and staff reflection to promote leadership through cultural development?
I was thinking about making sure that you provide that time to allow teachers to collaborate with each other.
Oh, yeah.
And then also providing opportunities for teachers to observe each other and offer each other that constructive feedback. I think that works, because that's what our school is doing right now. And it's beneficial for me, to be able to see what other teachers see, and what I'm doing and how I can improve myself. It seems less threatening when it's coming from your colleague, than if it's coming from the principal. So.
And I think too, with you saying that, with developing the time, using being creative as an administrator, trying to have go into their classrooms and walk through each other's classrooms, like taking advantage of those early dismissal days, or even like late arrival days to come in and to look at each other's classrooms to provide that constructive criticism. But I think it's very important. I was looking at an article the other day that it was talking about developing school culture by Douglas Fisher, and he was saying how it's not going to happen. The culture it takes time to, so making sure that they know that you set time limits, or time parameters, that they know that, okay, I have this time to go in the classrooms and walk through and look and provide that feedback to teachers. And he was also saying that in order to build positive culture, that you have to foster effort and productivity, improving collaborative activities, which that would be to promote better communication and problem solving, supporting successful change and improvement efforts, building commitment, and helping students and teachers identify with the school, amplifying energy and motivation of staff, and focusing attention and daily behavior on what is important and valued. So all of that, I feel like within all of that being said, I think that it's important that teachers understand that the culture is not going to be overnight, but definitely going in with classroom walkthroughs, even with if they knew that administration was coming in and it was like, okay, listen, I would really, with the 2 pluses and a wish, like, I really like that I saw you using technology. I really like that I saw you using helping with the reading strategies here. I would love for you to invite me at a time that I can see this going. I feel like if it's a less threatening, type of invitation too, I feel like teachers would be more willing to say, hey, I want to hear what you have to say so that I can continue to make improvements as well.
Good point.
And Candace, I had that conversation with the administrator I'm working with in terms of being able to do peer evaluation, because I like the idea that we do peer review with each other and we can provide that critical feedback and constructive criticism. And what he said was, my staff is not ready for that. So I think that does require some training, because he was saying that he felt like they would just put down, the good points, just to check it off, just to do it, and not really provide, was open to that constructive criticism, that collaboration. He's, because he's a new principal to the school and he's new altogether, he felt like he's building that relationship with the teachers and that culture so that, they get to that point. But he feel like, he said, like, right now, he don't feel like they are there yet. So with that being said, even thinking about doing that in the school, you have to have that culture and environment, and even probably some training, to and make sure that it's okay, like Calandra said, that you look at the negatives, but not like make it so punitive, like kind of coach each other and help each other and collaborate.
And I'm just gonna say this really quick. What you said on is important.
We can't hear you.
I'm about to say, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
Oh no. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I think what you said earlier is important about where that principal noticed that his staff is not quite ready.
Oh Lord.
Oh no. I don't know what's going on. Y'all keep going.
Okay. Nathan, you look like concerned. We had a concerned look on your face.
Is that what that? All right. I'm good. Let me just look at that question again, because we're still on 1, right?
Yes.
Right.
How can you create more professional development and staff reflection to promote leadership through cultural development? I think too, we need to think in terms of emphasize that word cultural development, because culture deals with a system of doing things, and so it's not just something we do as a result. Okay, well, we're just gonna do this because it's spur of the moment. It's a culture. It's the way we do things, and that goes back to I was very impressed. I know I had a principal that was my principal at Ridgeview, and one of the things that he did was he developed these 5 core values, and they became the lens that we saw everything through. He even made up cards. We had up these little business cards with the 5 core values on it. And he said, if you want to present anything to us as a faculty, you want to present anything to me, you would do best by going through these core values. And so they would derive from various places, and in his educational upbringing. And I had the card, and I think I still have it today. But I just thought it was incredible because you're guaranteed to be heard because you're speaking through the culture of the school. And so I think that's one of the things you do. Professional development can be better, it can be stronger, it can be strengthened if it's strengthened through the culture, because it's a part of us anyway. Our culture is us. And so I think that's definitely one of the ways you can develop that. And that staff reflection comes in because you're reflecting on whatever it is you want to introduce and how that relates to those core values.
I would also add on there, in terms of professional development, to acknowledge the culture in the school in terms of the students, and also be sure to include that culturally relevant pedagogy that is
True.
often left out and
True.
is often necessary to reach our students, and make that a part of the professional development, make it a part of the school culture, that we are infusing that in the curriculum.
You know, with the students, I think that you brought up a great point with the students, because with the students, those are those people that we don't normally think about whenever we're talking about whose opinion matters. And if, you know, there's numerous bits of research out there that says that if a student isn't engaged in having fun and doing things in the classroom, they're not going to learn. So if you don't take into account that the students, you know, how the students are feeling and kind of develop their you know, culture also just as a student body, not just as a teacher and a faculty, I think you have to spend as much time developing the culture for the students as you do as you have to incorporate the culture for that teacher. Because the teachers are taking your message as an administrator into the classroom every day, and you're hoping that they're embodying what you're saying as an administrator, but you're hoping that rubs off on the students, and then those students get that buy-in too. And those voices of the students, I think that it, like, you know, what she was saying, Tamika was saying that the voices of the students are just as important as the voices of the teachers, because without those student voices, they feel like they're not heard. And if they feel like they're not heard, then they're going to just kind of shut down on it, and then they're not going to have that buy-in. Then it doesn't sometimes matter what the teachers or the administration, you know, try to and you know, value in that school. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle when it comes down to it, because we really are trying to affect change in the students. And, you know, by the teachers affecting change, that's fantastic. But if the students aren't buying in, that's you know, tough to do too. I was also thinking about, you know, make sure that, you know, every so often, you know, what Kalandra was saying about the two wishes or the two pluses in a wish. I love that, because a lot of times whenever you go into the classroom, you get that, you know, you get that walkthrough, and you just say, man, I don't even want to open it up, because, you know, what's somebody going to say that I did wrong? Yeah. And you know, whenever school was tapped, they would always say, hey, here's a reinforcement and here's a refinement. So you knew, hey, we're going to say something good about you, but it doesn't matter how good it was. It doesn't matter if it was an A+ lesson. There's always room for something else to happen. So you can, you know, you knew it was coming. You knew that something was going to happen. It wasn't just one of those things where you kind of blindsided by it. Hey, we know you're going to get a good and you're going to get a bad, and not maybe that it was a bad, but like I think Nathaniel was saying, hey, bring it up in a positive way, so that whenever it's brought up in a positive way, you don't want to attack the teacher, because their confidence isn't that, you know, it's on shaky ground to begin with. And when you attack somebody that doesn't have that much confidence, sometimes that's shut down for the teacher too. So
yes, it is. I agree.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
You got your setup.
I had to revamp here.
You were just going in and out, but I think it was your internet. But we're gonna try your setup. Question 2 says, how can you develop emerging leaders within your school? And I'll start off by saying that I think it's important for administrators to model the behavior they wish to see in teachers. Wow. And I had this conversation again with the principal that I'm working with, and he actually pulled up a video to show me, because his huge thing this year is student engagement. And so at every faculty meeting, as a principal, he actually leads the faculty, the staff, in a engaging activity. He opens it up in some type of engaging professional development. So I think that is essential, that principals, leaders model the behavior they want to see?
I was just gonna say real quick, going back to what you said earlier with your principal saying that he noticed that people weren't ready for it. I think that goes right into what I was gonna mention about it's so important for administration to model what they expect to see.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did last year was when we brought in STEM, a lot of teachers were talking negative about it, and they didn't really notice that they were. So we took like, what we did was we took like an old time game that you play at like a baby shower. And you know how you get like a wrist, like a rubber band or a clothespin, and you can't say baby or you can't say, well, the teachers couldn't be negative. So we tried to model, because so many times they tell their kids, oh, you can't say can't, or you can't whatever. But then they're like the first ones to say it, like in a professional development. They're like, I can't do this. I can't, they're not even willing to try sometimes, like, and not knowing that they can do it. So we had where in our professional development, we had it something like that. And then they had to wear like a rubber band, and they could, if somebody else was being negative, they could pull the rubber band. I mean, not pull it, but they could take that person's rubber band, and whoever had the most rubber bands at the end got like a prize or something at the end.
I like that.
So like just something as simple as that. And I think that's a powerful, something powerful to get the teachers thinking like, oh, wait a minute, I don't expect less of my students. I mean, I shouldn't expect less of my students when I have to have a more positive attitude. So that's what I wanted to say earlier to you about the commend your principal on saying, okay, let me model it for my teacher.
Yeah, for sure.
I think to address question 2, that was excellent though. That was excellent. How can you develop emerging leaders? I think as a leader, when you see it, say something about it, and when you do see it and you say something about it, well, give the emerging leader some responsibility so that they will know that you mean what you're saying. If you say you see me as an emerging leader, okay, give me some responsibility that will help me develop into a leader. It's one thing to say it, it's one thing to see it, but the third part comes in where you allow me to apply what you say you see, and then give me some guidance in that area.
I'm glad you said that, because a conversation I had with the principal when he talked about engagement, I was very honest with him. I said, that's what everybody wants us to do. But the truth of the matter is the teachers who've been here while I've never been taught how to do it properly. That's just my opinion. I said, when I went to Project Lead the Way training, Calandra, you're familiar with that. That's when I really learned how to teach math. I said, but they taught me how to do it. I said, I didn't learn it in college. No one at the school taught me. I said, but PLTW taught me how to teach math, because I was learning how to apply the math in a different setting, and that project-based learning and stuff. So from there, I became a different type of teacher, but it was a different type of training. I said, so you have to teach the teachers how to do it, and go from there. And so that's why he said, well, that's why I'm modeling it. So I'm, but it still looks different in your content, though. I just
right.
And just to kind of piggyback off of you guys, that's the same thing I put in my notes. Is allowing those strong teachers that knows the information and knows how to present the content, allowing them to lead in a PLC, allowing them to share with department. Maybe they're good in math. Let them share with the math department what strategies are working in their classroom, in order to help other teachers. I think that helped me the most. I'm just thinking about when I was a teacher. Well, I am a teacher, but when I was teaching, when I was first learning how to teach reading at the school that I taught at before, and I had an excellent reading coach that just, like everything that I learned from her. I didn't learn it in school, like you said, Tamika. I didn't learn it in college. Mm-hmm. Everything I learned was on the job, and it was from those people who, were knowledgeable in that content area. So I think that's important too.
Good point.
Well, we're gonna move to the last question because we've run out of time, and he will start with you. How could this principal improve cultural leadership during classroom observations?
Well, when you guys were talking about question 2, that's kind of where you guys talked about it in question 2. I talked about that modeling in question 3. Yeah. And I think that question 2 and question 3 kind of go together in the fact that making sure that when you're talking about how you want to do it in the classroom. A lot of teachers get to the point in time where they sit there and say administration has been out of the classroom for so long, they don't even know what's going on in the classroom anymore. And I think it's really important that, whenever you do that classroom observation, that you go back and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, let's take it into the professional development. Let's take it into the staff meeting. Let's model something so they understand, hey, I still know how to do it. And I still understand what kind of goes into those classroom observations, and make sure that, I understand what I'm going to do to improve that culture, that culture in the classroom. Also, I also was talking about kind of taking it into that question 3. When you're in the classroom, you want to make sure that teacher that you're in that classroom, that they feel like they have your undivided attention. I've had some administrators that they pop into your classroom, and when they're in their classroom, they're on their cell phone, they're doing this, they're doing that, and you don't feel like you have their undivided attention.
Right.
And that, hey, maybe I just did something awesome that wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but that 30 seconds that I did this something awesome, they might have been on their cell phone and they might have missed it. So you want to make sure that whenever you're in that classroom and you're looking at that culture in that classroom, you got to take it in. You can't be waylaid by the cell phone or something else where you want to make sure that teacher feels like they're the most important person in the world whenever you're in that classroom, because you may only if you have 60 teachers, you may only get into everybody's classroom once every month. And if that 5 minutes that you're in that classroom, you make them feel inferior or belittled, then sometimes, just because, it's just the same thing with the student in the classroom. Sometimes you feel, as a student, hey, you're going to lose a student, you might lose a teacher. By not giving them that respect with that too. And make sure that, when you're in the classroom, hey, take some pictures. There's everybody's classroom has something awesome in it. Focus on, if you have a teacher that's just not doing what they need to be doing, but there's that one thing in the classroom, take a picture of it and put some sort of like wall of awesomeness in the hallway, and just put just a bunch of pictures on it, just say, hey, this is what's great that's happening in our school. And then make sure that those pictures rotate like monthly so that you can kind of see that, and make sure you send out some updates through email. Hey, I saw this in so-and-so's classroom. Hey, this was awesome. This was awesome. This was awesome. And everybody loves to do stuff positive, but also everybody loves to be recognized for doing something positive. That's what everybody wants, the recognition. I don't do it because, I do it because it's best for the kids, but I also want somebody to see it and say, hey, that's great. Let's incorporate that into another teacher's classroom or do something else with that. I think that's, I said a lot of what you were saying about the modeling, so I'm not going to bring that back up again, but I think that's what we have to do for that culture to make sure it's better.
It even goes back to what you were saying in one of our recordings from before about the importance of staff shout outs. So when you're as an administrator, when you're in a room, be present, but also going back to what both Heath and Nathaniel said, hey, this is how you were being a leader. I think it's important to specifically say, hey, I saw you doing this, and that is a leader, and thank you. I think that both of those were key points. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I want to add too, after you do those observations, is to always remember to give consistent feedback to your teachers. There's so many times where I have been observed and
nothing.
It was just like nothing. It's like, okay, this is what you did. Boom, that's it. I think it's important to tell the teachers, like y'all said, with those pluses. What did you call it, Kalandra? 3 pluses and a
3 pluses. Yeah, 3 pluses and a wish.
Doing that 3 pluses and a wish, in order to give that feedback, to those teachers. And I also talked about taking an active role. We all mentioned about professional development, but also the principal taking an active role in professional development. Like he said, not sitting in the corner on your cell phone or on your walkie-talkie, like really being active and presenting and being there, for them. So.
And this article I have on the screen talked about taking a fresh approach to professional development. That's what I was sharing with you earlier, and I was very interested in it. That's why I pulled it up. And it said, learn something new every day. Like, instead of just doing that isolated PD, establish or join a professional learning network, which is so powerful, keeps you relevant and up to date. Share an idea or resource every day. Take time to reflect in writing every day. and model by sharing your efforts to be a 21st century learner.
Wow.
And I just thought that was so relevant. That was one of the links he sent us, become a 21st century administrator. Does anyone else have anything they want to add the last minute? Well, all
I think
right.
early and often.
Go ahead.
Early, just get in there early and often too. I think that time is a big factor in it. If you sit there and you wait until the third 9 weeks and you sit there and try to correct something that's been going on the whole year, I think that the earlier you get in there and the better that that you make people think, that you're visible and you're flexible and you're making sure that you're in there. I think that goes a long way too.
It does. I agree.
And I think if you don't have time to voice it, at least, or you don't have time to write it down, when you see them in the hallway, say something to them, say something encouraging, say something that, okay, hey, I saw that in your classroom, keep that up, something like that. It takes less time maybe to say it than it does to write.
Yep.
Yes. But saying nothing, that hurts, and that makes people nervous bad.
Yep.
Makes you nervous.
Right.
Makes you nervous.
That's
Yep.
right. Well, it's been real. You guys are a great group, and I think we are done with scenario 5 and 6, and our time is running out. So until we meet again,
All right.
have a good week.
Okay. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.